Welcome to In the Room, where we explore the elusive world of casting for film, TV, and commercials. Join us as we interview directors, writers, producers, and actors, taking a deep dive into their experiences with casting and how the ultimate decisions are made in bringing a story to the screen. Get an inside look at casting and find out what really goes on in the room.
Maybe we're just a couple of people with imperfect records who have found each other at exactly the right moment. You were very confident last night.
No, that was just because I'm old and cranky. That's not the same as confidence.
I sounded crazy. Well, men love crazy.
How do you measure a man? By his choices, certainly. Honestly, ask yourself if we're more powerful together or apart.
That's it? That's all you got?
Are you in love with this person? How'd she blow your mind?
Ooh la la, what happens at the bar and grill stays at the bar and grill.
It's a red flag. Red flag.
I just want to have a conversation about choices versus circumstances, okay? Okay.
I think goodness and beauty flows through all of us all the time, if you let it.
Even if this turns out to be the only connection, I just think it's fantastic and wonderful to be able to feel like this.
It's all about faith. We lift each other up.
Am I being raptured? Or is this an actual earthquake?
I'll jump out and embarrass myself first. I'll do my hat thing. Kendra, can I do my hat thing? I haven't done my hat thing in a while.
I don't think she knows what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, remember I used to shout out my hats.
Oh, yes, you're right. You did. Go ahead. Do your
Okay. I didn't do my Chicken Earl hat, and I didn't do Kentucker Audley's The End hat. So today I'm going to do my Tina and Amy hat.
Or Amy and Tina.
Is it Amy and Tina?
Yeah, it's Amy.
Yes, it's Amy
Just a
and Tina.
podcast. Nobody can see. So I'm wearing a hat that says Amy and Tina, apparently. And this hat is brought to you by my good friend Blythe. She purchased it at the Amy and Tina show. Amy Poehler and Tina Fey had a show. And Blythe was kind enough to purchase my ticket because I'm an out-of-work actor and we're on strike. And my beauty supply job only pays me $13 an hour and they just cut me down to 20 hours. These are facts. But she was nice enough to pay for my ticket so I could go to the show. Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, for those of you who don't know, are two women. And they're funny. And so Blythe took me to the show, and I'm wearing their hat. They have merch, and this is one of their items of merch, and I'm wearing their hat.
Okay. Cool.
Also, my friend Blythe, segue, is also a woman, and she's funny. And she wrote a book called Something Smells Like Pee. Her name is Blythe Jewell. And her book can be found if you go to a man named Jeff Bezos has a website. He's a billionaire and he's not funny, but he has a website called Amazon, and you can go there and purchase her book called Something Smells Like Pee. The holidays are coming up. It's good for Christmas. It's really funny. And it's less than $5. So you should go there and purchase it.
Okay.
Because it's funny and she's a good person. Just putting out all the gratitude and all the fun and all the feels and the loves.
And is that how you pronounce it? Bezos?
I don't know. Who cares? Who cares about Jeff Bezos?
In the original Amazonian. Yeah.
Amazonian.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even better than that, Kendra, how are you?
I'm doing well, Heather. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm hanging in there.
How about you, John?
Good. I'm ready. Let's
Good.
go.
Yeah.
Let's do it. We have a real live human in the room with us today.
Yay.
We're really excited. His name is Andrew Bujalski. Does that say it? Did I say it right?
Yeah, I think so. As well as I say it.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Andrew real quick. He is a writer, director, and sometimes actor who has been called the godfather of mumblecore. Holy cow, that's a heavy crown. He was born in Boston, grew up in Newton, and studied film at Harvard Department of Visual and Environmental Studies. From his films Funny Ha Ha and Mutual Appreciation to Beeswax and Computer Chess, his work has been compared to the works of John Cassavetes and Mike Leigh. He shot the only feature film shot almost exclusively with original Sony 1968 AVC 3260 black and white video cameras. He worked as a writer on Disney's live-action remake of Lady and the Tramp. And with his most recent film, There, he was tasked with the challenge of shooting a film during the pandemic where no actor would ever be in the same room as another actor. And he's in the room with us today.
I am in the room.
Yes.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here, Andrew.
I like that Harvard can't call it film school. They have to have it.
Well, they changed the name since it was Visual and Environmental Studies when I was there, which nobody knew what that meant.
You're right.
They have, I think, succumbed to 21st century. Now as I forget what the new name is, but it sounds more like a film department.
Film department. Okay, good.
Did you study the environment with the cameras?
I mean, yeah, we definitely pointed the cameras at our environment. So yeah. It makes some kind of sense, I guess, if you're willing to. I think they named it in the 70s.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So my favorite thing to start with is Andrew Bujalski is born. And how does this all start for you? Like, what is that little kernel in you that makes you think, I want to pick up a camera or tell stories or talk about the human condition in some way cinematically? Like, what is the fire?
I was a movie crazy kid, and it was the only, I don't remember a time before that. So in the early 80s, when my parents are taking me to movies, like Rocky III, I remember was big for me. And of course, all the Star Warses and the Star Treks and all that stuff, it just hit me hard. And I would make my parents take me again and again and again. They had to take me to Rocky III several times. And then of course, then we got a beta player when that was a thing. And it was just an obsession that took hold early. And I think all the time about I am now a middle-aged man who's still kind of working for that 5-year-old, who's still cracking the whip and saying, you got to do this. I don't know if that's wise or not, but I never really gave serious thought to another path, for better and worse.
I've heard other filmmakers describe that too.
What was it? Rocky III the first? I mean, mine was Grease. What was Rocky III? Was the first one?
I don't know if it was the first, but it's one that I remember a lot. I remember.
What was it about?
Let's go again and again.
The underdog story or the hero's journey?
I was a kid. I don't know. I just remember it was
cool.
so intoxicating. And it kind of took me a minute to understand that the reason the number 3 was in the title was that there were others that I could go and revisit.
And then you had a Betamax or a VHS?
First we had the Beta, converted eventually, of course. But Conan the Barbarian, all these things that in retrospect, as a parent now, I'm like, I don't know if they should have let me be watching that.
I just took my kids back to some of them. I was like, oh my God, this is so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost everything.
And Betamax too, I only had like Man with One Red Shoe. I only had like 5 movies, right? And then everyone else had VHS, and you're like, nope, I'm watching this one again.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. It was fun to watch them over and over again. And, the tapes that you loved, and
Did you have like a movie watching family? Like, did you guys go to the movies? Did they love the movies?
They encouraged my love of it. My parents were divorced, so that was also like, if it was a dad weekend, then from dad I could definitely push on, okay, we're going to go to 3 movies, Dad, and that's what we did. They tolerated it, and I guess it's an easy enough thing as a parent to do.
Such a dad move,
of course.
Here's some money, kid. Go to the movies.
No, he was with me. He sat there a bunch of them.
He didn't go with you, or you just okay. Yeah.
But then, at a certain
point. I
was
at Oppenheimer, and a guy was with his 10-year-old kid next
to
me. And I was like, dude.
That's one of these. Right. With the cover the eyes.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's how I grew up going to the movies too. My mom doing that. My mom always went like this, and I knew. But what's funny is she always had a little crack. So I used to always do trying to see. I don't know if I really caught everything or had a really clear idea of what I was looking at.
Did you have that kind of relationship with your mom? She would take you to the movies?
Yeah, she took us to the movies, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yep. We would movie hop. We would have a day, we used to see several movies, yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I used to just sneak in and go and see them all day.
Well,
did you?
I think we probably did do some of that, but I just remember going to see Like my mom and I sometimes would have like a girl day, right? And we would go. And I remember there was one movie in particular we really loved. We just fell in love with that movie. So we went to the restroom and we watched a guy clean up. And then we were like, let's go back in there. And we saw it again. Like we just saw the movie twice.
I took my kids to a movie over Christmas. They're like, and it was a discount theater. They're like, we can sit anywhere we want. I was like, yeah, you can sit anywhere. This is amazing.
I had my friend Jacqueline in LA. That never occurred to me for some reason. We were in our 20s and we would like make popcorn at home and put it in big plastic bags and get a giant purse. And then we would go to the movies and then like come out towards the end and then go in the hall and she would be like, "What? Let's go see let's go see that one, the Queen Latifah movie." And I was like, "Really?" Like it never occurred to me. And we'd go into
an all-you-eat buffet. For you.
Yeah, and we'd go see like 3 movies in a day.
I long for the days when there were 3 movies in a multiplex that I wanted to see. You know?
Right? So true, right? I mean, I guess if you want to see 3 superhero movies in a day.
You were going to say you took your 13-year-old to Oppenheimer?
Yeah, he wanted to go. I think because they advertise during sports. Anything that advertises during sports, he intrigues him.
Okay.
Yeah. My wife actually took him to that, so I didn't get his. I think he was a little confused
During Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And possibly bored.
Really?
Yeah. But he made it through. Yeah.
So killer of the whatever moons is next on this list.
You know what? I went to that and and he said, "What is that?" And I kind of briefly I just told him it had murders in it, and he wanted to go, but he sat that one out.
Okay,
he did. We didn't do that. Also 4 hours.
I might have mentioned.
Yeah, he was like, okay, maybe next time. Okay, so you love movies. And then you're in high school, and then are you like in the movie club?
Next thing you knew, I was a middle-aged man.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. No, I was, and we, at some point we had a camcorder, and I was, monkeying around in the backyard with friends and trying to make stuff. And then in high school, there was a class where a little Super 8 class, and so that was fun.
And you were like splicing and cutting
splicing
for real.
On, yeah. I cut 16 for a long time. I don't have any tattoos, but I do have a splicer scar.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's special.
That's the closest thing I have to a tat.
And I did read that you went to high school with Alex Karpovsky, but you didn't know that.
I did, but I didn't. He's a year ahead of me, and he, oddly, for a guy who is now a professional actor who has made a career out of putting himself out there, I think he was very quiet in high school.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like a lot of people didn't know him in high school.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so you're splicing around, you're making stuff with your friends, and are you thinking, I'm going to try to do this with my life?
Yeah, because I was nuts, so now I was...
So you had all the makings of a filmmaker.
Well, the main thing is the lack of ability to do anything else.
Right.
I find that's my secret to longevity.
Yeah.
Is a total lack of qualification for all other careers.
Did you ever talk to your parents about it though? Were they business people?
My dad's a business guy. And I have a total mental block on for several decades. My dad's been explaining to me what he does, and I don't. It won't register.
Yeah.
So, he definitely, and my mom also had a business career, but she had come from the arts. She was a visual. She drew and painted, also talents I've not inherited. So I think they always, certainly both were extremely encouraging. My dad would do a little bit of, I think also for fear that, that my mom wasn't instilling this message, he would kind of remind me that I was going to have to earn a living. But there was never really nobody ever stood in the way. Nobody ever said, don't do this. Again, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to college and studied it. And when I was when I was right out of college, the first job I stumbled into, appropriately enough, was teaching a high school film studies class. So everything they just filled my head with in college, I then spewed to some high school sophomores, and that was fun. But during those couple of years, I was writing a lot, and I wrote 4 or 5 screenplays, which were not very good. And then finally, speaking of casting, I had the notion to write one for my roommate, who was not a professional actor. But I thought, Kate is a wildly charismatic person, and I think maybe she could carry a movie. And I said, "Hey, Kate, do you want to star in a movie?" She's like, "Yeah, okay." We didn't know what we were talking about. But so I went and wrote this thing, and that ended up being my first feature. And that was and then ever since, it's like, you get just enough encouragement to keep going.
Do you say those things that you first wrote weren't very good now looking back?
No, I knew it at the time. I mean, that was
Why did you know it at the time?
Well, I didn't know much. I'm in my early 20s. I've come out of college and made some student films, and great learning process, great fun. Again, not particularly great films, but I think I knew I wanted to do this. I didn't really know what it would take. I'm stubborn enough that I didn't do the thing. I didn't move out to LA and try to find my way up the ladder. And in part that's personality. In part also maybe just kind of I was looking at my indie heroes, and that made a lot more sense to me to try to do something that was somewhere in the world of some kind of auteur voice, whatever that is.
Who were your indie heroes?
Well, you mentioned Cassavetes and Lee, who I would not compare my films to, but certainly I love those movies. Yes. Those movies meant everything to me. But, I also had, I think, fairly wide taste, because all I was doing at that point in my life was sitting in movie theaters and trying to take in everything I could. So, plenty of Hollywood stuff too, but I think, the stuff that I thought maybe I can do is something that would be particular and specific and somehow my own. And that, I guess, was what was not there when I was trying. I knew I was going to have to devote my life to it, whatever that was, whatever life I had. And none of those early things I had written kind of seemed worth it.
Did you connect to that through the writing or through like the watching, or just was it an accumulation of everything where you're like, okay, I know there's a voice in here, and how am I gonna discover it?
Well, I know that when I sat down, when I had this notion of writing something, writing a vehicle for Kate Dollenmeyer to play the lead in, the writing seemed better. It whatever it was, and maybe it was just my imagination of her in that role, but it was resonating for me, and I could see the movie in a way that wasn't really happening when I was writing a little more abstractly.
Has that carried on though, as far as you have someone in mind that kind of like a muse that leads you through the writing process?
I've whenever I can.
Yeah.
And it's not every time, and you can't rely on it every time. And especially as you get into, more professional stuff. And it's one of the things that drives me crazy about professional stuff is that casting at that level, when you're dealing with Hollywood people, you have to be flexible, because Tom Cruise said, no, let's look at Brad Pitt. Not that I'm ever looking at those guys. But
I was about to say we need to talk. I think maybe we got to adjust your list.
That's just an example.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're that, and that's what makes me, because that's how those things work. Like, you start with the most famous possible person, and then you go down to the most second most famous possible person, and not really with much thought for the fact that every time you got to have a completely different movie with every one of those people, and so that's what's
so hard in the casting process is you have this idea and not available, won't do it, not available, won't do it. And it changes the movie completely. And you're like, oh, I guess I can imagine it with this. He said yes? Okay, we'll make it with him.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, how a lot of not so good movies come to be.
Yeah.
And that was, exactly the thing that I thought, and I continue to think as much as I can, but, I can steer away from that. If I have no money and no one cares, then we can do whatever we want, and we can make something that is unique and that is built purposefully.
Yeah, and fascinatingly enough, talking with those producers recently, they had an actor fall out, and then, needing to find someone budget-wise with possessing the same value, not being able to find that person, flipping it to a female. Right. In the role, they got what they wanted, and it was even better in some respects. It's like,
but with they're there, man. I guess can't imagine some of those. Like, it's so much dialogue. It's so actor driven. They have to hold You did such a great job of picking the right people to hold the frame, to hold those scenes. Are so takes a very skilled actor to do. So
it's by far the hardest thing I've ever asked an actor.
Yeah. And so if Jason or Liv says no, it's like, well, I don't know who am I going to next?
But that's a unique and bizarre project, and kind of 180 degrees from everything you're supposed to do. And
Right.
I'm a big believer in chemistry. I'm a big believer in getting the right feeling in the room. And we set out to make a movie where there was no room.
So you've probably never done any casting process like that ever before.
No, but in a way, it. Because the project was so bizarre, it allowed us to kind of, in some ways, do things for me to be a little more okay with this kind of conventional idea of well, we'll see who we can get and what we can make, because I didn't need them to make sense together. The whole point of the movie was that
the whole thing isn't going to make sense in the traditional way.
Yeah,
right.
We were pushing.
Much fun.
Pushing into wrong. So there are plenty of people in that movie who are doing their side of the scene, and we haven't cast the other side yet. They have no idea who they're going to be acting against, which is very weird.
Yeah. So then is the other actor the anchor to watch that performance and sort of ground it in? Was that?
No, we kind of played by our own rules, essentially. So, nobody saw the other side. They might have known who the actor was.
Right.
But
so maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay. For our listeners. Let's start from the beginning then of There There. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the beginning.
The beginning. And I hesitate. I think we got in trouble with this movie because everybody understandably wanted to pin it as that's a COVID movie, that's a lockdown movie, and nobody wants to watch a COVID movie or a lockdown movie, myself included. And certainly, I don't know that we would have done it without that kind of kick in the ass inspiration, we can't do anything, so what can we do?
Had you written this movie before?
I hadn't written it before.
COVID.
No. So the first spark of it came out of that moment. There was 3 months, right, where everything was completely shut
So
down.
this was strictly during lockdown in 2020?
Yeah. I just started to think, well, what is possible?
What is
now?
possible?
But it led me into this experimental idea, this idea that I know would have been interesting to me at any point, just because
yeah, sure.
the whole process of how movies are made is so essential to what movies are, the weirdness of building truths out of lies, and that every time I cut from you to me, it's a fake, We shot me hours later and maybe you weren't even there.
Book title, Building Truths Out of Lies.
Right.
I'm gonna mark that one.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. So I just, I thought, well, let's take this thing that kind of is always in movies and chemistry is always controlled. Let's push that really, really, really fucking far and because we might as well now. Of course, it took me, years to make the movie. And by the time I was, most production had come back, but we were still chasing our weird idea.
You were the one guy going, God, could COVID keep going?
No, I was very, trust me, I was happy to
be out of it.
Happy to be out of it. But yeah, we just followed the idea. And, when we started shooting, that was it was before vaccine. It was still very difficult, of course.
Yeah.
What did that shooting process look like?
It was because every actor was being shot individually. There are 8 people in the movie. So it was kind of like 8 mini shoots. It wasn't like a conventional shoot. And I should say, again, just following this experimental idea, I wasn't there. I was on Zoom. My DP was on Zoom. The producers were on Zoom. There was the only people who were there were the performer. There would be kind of one crew member. Basically, all of our equipment fit in a Pelican case, and we would ship it around to wherever the people were. And we'd find one person on the ground who could, it was an iPhone camera and the Filmic Pro app, so that you would have one person who was kind of doing everything. And then
in the room with the actor, or setting up
in the room.
Okay.
Yeah. And wearing a mask.
And are
being very careful.
you're earbuding with them, or?
Well, we're all on Zoom, so there's one communication channel, which is interesting too. So if my DP is dialing in a setting with that person, I got to kind of wait my turn to talk to the actor. I can't pull them aside.
Yeah.
And it required tremendous patience from everyone. It also, for the actors, they're doing these, 15-page scenes, and we're just drilling it. It's kind of more like rehearsing a play in a way, because we got tons of coverage because we needed it, because we didn't know what was going to fit where. Yeah, and so and I'm on Zoom. I can't see or hear that well. I'm doing my best to be a good director. Although I realized quickly that the insecurity I felt there was pretty much identical to the insecurity I feel in real life anyway. It's like you're always kind of drinking from the fire hose when you're directing a movie. It's just too much information, and you're trying to be as helpful as you can, but who knows what you've missed. That's true. That's true whether I'm there or on Zoom.
Yeah.
So and it was so grueling for the actors, because they never, first of all, the camera never turns around to the other person. It's just they're on doing these very long scenes over and over and over again for, a 12-hour day. And it was intense.
Is your crew doing the other lines for them, or someone reading on Zoom? Or?
So there was usually somebody in the room with them. I think not in every case, but usually we did have and we build them in the movie as the phantom cast, because there's no trace of them in the movie, and yet those people were so crucial to keeping the thing alive. So we had these great and incredibly selfless actors to do that kind of work.
Yeah,
and get,
for sure. That's a big ask.
It is a big ask.
And how hard did they go? Did they memorize? Did they read off page, or?
The Phantoms?
Yeah.
The Phantoms, I mean, they could have the pages. I think they usually did.
Okay.
Although again, even if they didn't memorize it by the end of your 12-hour day,
you got it. Yeah.
You've got it.
You got those pages done. Yeah.
What was the process though? Like, since we were in lockdown, like getting those actors on board?
Well, it's, I think another thing I've learned in these years of doing indies is these things kind of end up being self-selecting, at a certain point, because I made my first few movies with non-professional actors, basically friends or people who might as well have been friends. And then once you take that step into the professional world, of course, I had the fear of like, well, what if I get divas? And I realized quickly, divas are not going to return my call in the first place. Right. I don't have enough to offer a diva. So
they're also not drawn to this type of work usually. Yeah.
So in that sense, my relationships with actors have been, almost entirely great all the time, because they're people who want to be there or they wouldn't be there. And that was true of this too. I mean, you learn pretty quickly. I mean, I think, certainly there are people we sent the thing to who are like, I don't understand. Right. What is this? Yeah. But the ones who came aboard all were down for the challenge. And so.
And at that time, like, I think also, speaking from an actor, like we missed it. Like we needed something.
I also think the ask might have helped as well. Like, we're going to do this challenge. Like, that's like, okay, this is interesting. This is different. I want to go through this journey and see how this works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, Lenny James, who's so great in the movie, he'd been doing Walking Dead for a decade. And I think, I know he was looking for, he said something about like, well, I'd like to do something where I feel frightened again. I was like, well,
there we go.
Let me try to frighten you.
Here's your page. That's great.
Okay, so you're getting the cast together. And so who's up first?
Because it was so weird, I wanted to go into it with, some notions of who I could go to. So I think for every part, for all these 8 parts, I had my first idea, and I think it shook out that half of those. I think I got 4 of the people who I thought of first, and Jason Schwartzman was one of those. And so he was important, of course. Once because we had no idea if we were going to be able to pull this off. But once we had him, we thought, okay, people will respect that.
Yeah.
And that will, and finance will respect that, and that will, give us the momentum.
And I just have to ask, because whenever I see a movie like this, it feels so effortlessly, just like, I just assume you know all these people.
Jason I'd met.
Okay, because
so
I'm
that
just
was.
You just know all these people. You just called them up and you were like, hey, Lily Taylor, just come. You want to just do this
Lily,
movie
I
with
didn't
me?
know. And I'm an idiot because I think her name came up early and I was like, Lily Taylor's not going to do this. I think we waited longer than we should have to go to her.
Yeah.
We were kind of running out of ideas, and Jasper was like, okay, fine, we'll try Lily. She's going to say no.
I'm like, these are just his buds, right? Like, he just called them up.
No, but Jason is the friendliest dude in show business, as far as I can tell.
He seems like it, because I'm like, he just shows up in everybody's movies. He just must know everybody.
He's very friendly.
That's awesome. Okay, so
when you say no, Jason, you met him a couple times? Or?
I met him a couple times.
Yeah,
and it wasn't a deep relationship.
Yeah. So he was open to talking to you, and
I had his email address.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I think that's good for people to know, right?
Yeah.
Like, it does work out sometimes.
Yeah.
Just take the chance.
Yeah.
You never know.
I mean, it was also lucky time. He has 3 kids, and like he'd been at home locked down, so he
Get
was,
me out of that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, it was a moment where we were like kind of stir crazy. I mean, I remember you and I had a long conversation. Like, we were trying to figure out, well, what's going to happen next? Like, what can we do?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the office got shut
Yeah,
down.
no,
Like,
I mean, there was not one piece of production worldwide happening.
Right.
It was crazy. And I turned to saying to people, I said, look, I have 4,000 out of work actors with 4K cameras in their pockets. Like, let's try to do something.
Yeah.
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 So kind of similar to probably what you were like, okay, how can this work?
Well, and you saw so many things. So many people leapt to making, Zoom-based movies, and there's a ton of, content that immediately.
I was actually doing a lot of COVID commercials.
Yep.
I mean, working COVID on commercials.
Yeah.
Right,
no,
right,
all that.
right.
All that.
I was
a lot of that
swabbing boogers
Yeah,
and
sure.
running COVID tests
sure.
on commercial shoots.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're saying actually working on the
Yeah, I was
shoots.
like
Right.
working the COVID department on commercial shoots.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Many boogers to be swabbed.
Yeah, I was swabbing
Yeah.
boogers. Anyway, so you got Jason.
So we got Jason, and that was the moment when we thought, okay, maybe we can pull this off. Maybe not.
At that point, did you go for the financing, or did you already have that?
I can't remember. I know we were in touch with people, and I think once we had Jason, then that became a more serious conversation. And we told them who our other targets were, some of whom did not come through, but we gave them the kind of idea, like, what if we got 5?
Listen, this is a hard movie to get financed.
It is,
yeah,
and it's a very low budget, of course, and
but
yet
still, even to get a $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 check out of people is not easy.
No, it never is.
Yeah, it never is.
And it's not getting any easier.
Yeah.
But we were very lucky. We found finance that was willing to take the risk on this, and it was a huge risk. But I think people were interested to see what would happen, what we could do, and it's fun to talk about it in this context because I think so much of what that movie is and what I was asking actors to do is it does kind of come from the casting process. Like I knew that certainly any professional actor kind of got this scenario because they all live and die by self-tapes now. It's like, this is just a self-tape movie. It's the 94-minute self-tape movie.
Yes, it is.
I was like, don't get her started.
Yeah.
Self-tapes.
No, it's horrible. I mean,
No,
I hate asking actors to do it, and it's an awful process, and yet I kind of that plus like special effects too. It's like you all have also had to have conversations with tennis balls. So
it's so exciting to see if you can pull it off.
In what you did though, there's a self sort of like monologue enjoyment of like have someone's in the room, you are all this attention on you, and you get to sort of just live in your head. Mm-hmm. And so there's like a fun
ultimate make-believe,
to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ultimate make-believe.
I mean, it's probably the best version of a self-tape.
The best version of a self-tape, for sure.
That's what we were going for.
Yeah, for sure. And then also very exciting to see if you could pull it off.
Of course.
See like, can he really make me believe that these two people are in the same
Well, you just did a good job of holding our attention
together.
for what is essentially, just cut.
It's all shot reverse shot.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's a crazy thing to try to do. But sometimes I get crazy ideas stuck in my head.
I love crazy.
So as far as like dealing with the actors and going through, so you get Jason, you get Liv, and then do you start a rehearsal process via Zoom, or what does that look like? Yeah,
I mean, and this is true of everything I've ever done too. It's like, you get what you can get when you can get it. So I'm always happy to have as much rehearsal as I can get. I often don't get that much. So that totally depended actor to actor. And again, we're shooting this over the course of 6 months. So Jason was our first shoot. Lily Taylor was our last shoot. And so we're kind of at every stage of the process.
And so you
did
every actor, you finished that one out, went to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're in Austin?
Yeah, I'm sitting at my desk the whole time.
Jason is wherever
in LA.
he lives.
Yeah.
And then
Lily was in New York, and then she shot one scene in Brooklyn, one scene upstate.
Annie was
Annie's
in
in Texas. Avi Nash was in Bologna, Italy.
I can tell that. I was like,
I was thrilled to have Bologna in the
Yeah,
movie.
That was
great.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
like production value is going crazy here.
Totally.
And then
What a great way to get locations
Although-
for free.
totally.
Although I will say for Zoom, like my DP, my poor beleaguered DP lives in Munich, so he was always it was horrible for him
God, his
schedule
hours.
wise.
Oh.
But then he got me back when we shot Bologna because I was like, oh, okay, this is a
Yeah.
work day that starts at midnight and goes to noon.
Oh god.
Here we go.
Oh,
That had to be probably the easiest scene because it was done over Zoom, right?
They were all over Zoom for me.
Oh, for you. I know I'm saying, but as far as like in
right,
the movie.
in the
right?
movie, yeah, because that is the, they all have their own challenges.
challenge, yeah.
I mean, that in a way that was a very fun scene because it freed us up to put the camera anywhere,
Yeah.
and we didn't have to do the same cut because every other scene we're also having to design these spaces. I mean, the kind of premise of the movie is the first scene is Lenny James and Lily Taylor, and Lenny is in a bedroom in Austin, and Lily is in a
how
bedroom
did
in New
you
York,
do
but
that?
we kind of play them as the same bedroom, although they do not look alike. One has green walls and one has white walls. So the whole movie is this cognitive dissonance thing, but it also requires a fair bit of mapping. There's time we have to spend going like, how do we get these two bedrooms to overlay each other properly?
So how do you do Lenny's bar and Molly's bar?
Yeah.
How do you find that location?
And Avi's in that as well. So we have 3 bars.
Oh, yeah.
We got a bar in LA, a bar in Austin, and a bar in Bologna.
How did you do that?
All bars kind of have the same shape. So,
But the same lighting too.
there's one string of string lights that we sent. We sent a string of string lights to Italy, and then we sent it back. But the bars, other than that, it's funny to me that scene in particular, people are convinced it's the same bar. It's really not, and it really doesn't look like it, except for that string light. If you, it's crystal clear if you look behind the bar. Like,
I mean, when you turn around
it
behind the bar, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
But most of the
kudos.
time, the coloring of the bar,
It's that moody setting. Like it felt really moody. So I
Also,
think that's
kudos
what
to the
that
actors
kept
because
it.
I think they hold most of the attention, and you
Well,
don't pay.
for sure.
You're not
That's
paying
true,
attention.
too.
Of course.
I've always said in movies, and when they're like, "Oh, the table," I'm like, if they're paying attention to the table, we're kind of
that's
fucked
true
on this
too.
thing.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's
Absolutely.
true too.
And I don't think I was paying. I was all in on the acting.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's what,
That's
we're
what
going
you want.
for.
That's
exactly.
what you want. Yeah, that's the
I
idea.
think everybody did such a good job of holding attention. You know.
It's an extraordinary group of actors, top to bottom, and that's it's true for every movie I've ever made. Obviously, in this case, it's kind of absurdly true that there's nothing else on screen except these performances.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I wouldn't know how to make a movie that wasn't about the performances.
But did you have somebody go find those bars, like locations, or did you have the actors go?
Yeah, no, we did our best to scout and scrounge and find places. So I think we had a locations person in LA who found the LA bar for us. In Austin, it's the Cloak Room, which I also shot there on computer chess, and they were good enough to have us back. In Bologna, I forget where we found it. I mean, these bars were also closed at the time, and we're kind of happy to have our $100 or whatever we could afford to pay them.
And so, and you did a rehearsal process, and everybody was up to the challenge of all that dialogue and carrying that. And did you start to talk with them about the other performance, or how did you guys go about?
Not really. And what I realized, I was worried that I would be biased, that we shot one side of the scene already, then I was going to bring that to the end. I didn't really, because we shot so much.
Right.
And I hadn't cut it yet. I couldn't really cut one side without the other side. So
black screen.
Yeah.
Black screen.
Yeah. So, I had all this material, but I hadn't really watched it or those choices hadn't been made yet editorially. So I didn't bring, what I was bringing was kind of the same thing I brought to the other one, which was my sense of the script, my sense of what these scenes were about. And it wasn't until later that I would actually get the two things together that I started to feel
if they matched up, or
what we could build out of
so
them.
there was so in your directing, it was more about trying to find the authenticity and the honesty and the truth and the
and going back to whatever the ideas were, wherever this thing started from, whatever I talked to these actors about in rehearsal. And
what would you say is what this is rooted in?
Well, I mean, all those scenes are about trust and faith. That's because the movie is such a trust exercise. It's all kind of variations.
And did that come
theme.
from the COVID experience, or was that some?
It came from me thinking if I'm going to do something this bizarre, what is the appropriate thing to do? You know, what am I writing about if I'm doing such a wild cognitive dissonance experiment?
Yeah.
And that was it. That was
that. I mean, because that was my experience through COVID. Was I had to let go of control. I could not control. There's nothing. That was my biggest thing that I took away from COVID. Was I have to let go and trust.
And you know, you make movies. There's a whole lot of trust involved.
Yeah, a whole lot. Yeah. I mean, that's what always gets me through the auditioning process is like, you know, you get an actor and you just offer it to him, and it's like, I have to trust that this guy's going to deliver.
I think as actors too, we have no control ever at any point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember a very long time ago, I did a mini series called Murder in the Heartland, and it was about Charlie Starkweather, and there's this whole scene where, you know, he forces us out of the car and makes us go into the storm cellar, and he's going to kill us. And I remember making this very specific choice that when I get out of the car, I'm not going to close the door because I'm so terrified. Why would I get out of the car and close the door behind me and then go? And I remember we were all gathered around in the living room with my parents and we're watching it. And I get out of the car, and in the edit, they added the sound of a door closing. And I was fucking horrified. I was so pissed. And I just remember feeling at that moment, like, I never have any control. Like, I never at any point. And then I learned even further, an editor, the choice
we can
of
make
the edits
choices,
they make,
but we don't have control of what the final cut is.
Yeah, I've had an entire performance made of mine in the edit. I've had it made and I've had it broken. And at the end of the day, it's like I don't get to choose which of my takes they make, and that ultimately creates my performance. And so it's like, you know, from the audition and the rehearsal and the day of the shoot and what ends up on the screen ultimately throughout my entire journey, I'm never in control of.
Well, it's the trust with your director.
It's the trust with whatever it is. It's just the letting go of it the entire time. It's like never having any control.
Because I think what happens when we're on set is we have these moments with our castmates and we're like, oh, that was so great.
Yeah.
And you just think that's going to be the one. Going to be the edit.
Yeah.
And you look and go, oh, with that one. Okay. So yeah, I mean, and you just got to hope that it came across to everyone, but in the back of our mind,
you just
like
go.
They could have chose a different scene.
Yeah.
Because we know we had so many different options, but then at the same time, you have to look at the full picture and like the flow of the story. Like, did it help or not? You know,
I think it's true for directors too. I think you have, you know, moments and takes where you go like, that was magic. And then you get back and you watch and you go, was it magic?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, why is that? Because that happens quite a bit where you're like, this is phenomenal, and you watch it, it may different mood, different energy, like different vibe that you're in or emotion or like.
I've gone back and watched things that I did years ago that I'm now like, oh,
yeah,
I thought that was
good,
pretty magical,
or even
and
stuff
now
that
it's
I've written.
not.
Like I've written scripts, I'm like,
Same.
oh, this is good. And then I go back years later. I think and then in the moment, it feels so great. You have time because there's a gap from, okay, we went from that scene to this scene to this scene. Then you got to collect and go through all the scenes and trying to edit together. Now you're looking at it through a different point of view.
I guess
like
we go back to his throwback of his early films, how they were.
Your perspective
I mean, and as a writer, you know, usually the first thing you write is not always the best. I mean, if you've taken a writing class, they always tell you you're constantly writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting. And as you keep going, you look back at your old stuff, you're like, oh, that was crap. But, you know,
I think some stuff gets
somewhere.
lost, though, in that idea, too, though. I've seen it happen where they just keep writing and writing. And I'm like, this version was so much better. You know?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's back to kind of like the trust thing. You got to trust yourself and say, I have to stop. Like, this is where the story, let's shoot this story.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about the movie that you made when if you know that like so much of acting is reacting, right? And so on the day, your actors were reacting to a phantom actor who never really existed. And then the other actor was reacting to another phantom actor. And then you cut those two together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you've kind of made this Frankenstein of a thing.
But what I love most about it when I watch it is also so much of what you do is an act of imagination. Imagining yourself into the situation, imagining that you are in love with this person, you hate this person, whatever it is. So we have that in a kind of a pretty pure form where I've taken away the object, but then I reunite them with the object on screen. So I watched that in the first scene. I think here's Lily Taylor imagining Lenny James, even though she doesn't, she's not thinking about Lenny James at all, but she's imagining this character, this guy.
Right.
And then I can cut to the thing she's imagining. And to me, that has its own kind of magic.
They're committed to that truth in their mind, in their imagination. So you're literally getting the most honest performance because they're really committed to the person that they're imagining. Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's cool.
If it works. I mean, it's it's a bonkers movie, and it's not an easy movie to watch or to make. But it is.
I thought this was probably due to you, was just the tone of the piece and the acting it lended itself to be able to create that environment.
Well, again, I think in anything you make, you're looking at the elements you have and trying to figure out how can I make something out of this. And so that's the fun of these things. It's also scary, but always trying to make the most of what you got.
I don't know what it says to Annie Lagonga's nature, but her performance in this, I never for a second thought that she was not in whatever room that she was supposed to be in, across from whoever she was supposed to be across from. She was just like a dagger.
Yeah.
I mean, she was just powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I was so thrilled to be able to get, and she, I think, has been the most, uniformly, like, she's been the actor I've heard the most about, people saying, and in part it's because people don't know her. So it's been a lot of like, who is that? She's amazing. But I think, that people really responded to that before. And she was the first person I thought of, but I knew that was going to be a bit of a challenge because she's not famous, and she's also not really a screen actor. She has not done much of it. She's done a lot in the kind of storytelling monologue.
It was a challenge to get her cast.
Well, because I'm going to financiers and I'm saying, how about if instead of another famous person, we got this person that you've never heard of?
That. You did.
And I kind of got lucky, honestly, because we did have to go through some process of let's offer this to some famous people, and I'd sit there keeping my fingers crossed that they would turn me down, and they did.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's awesome.
And so every role had a name in mind for the financiers when you had them sign on?
Not everyone, but I think, and I think we went to them with this idea of like, well, we'll try to get 4 or 5 or whatever it is, and of course, there were some bigger ones which would have had more impact. But we got through it.
That's amazing.
And so once you
she
start
was
getting
so
into the machine, right, and you start dealing with the agents and stuff like that, how hard was that process to get them to sign on?
Again, maybe we had some kind of COVID goodwill or something, and you're dealing with actors who want to do it, so that certainly helps.
Right.
I think the agent stuff is so odd because you never know what's coming from them and what's coming from the client, and it's so like. I'm so glad you guys are doing a show about casting because I think it's the most important.
Yeah,
part
I'd like to talk about that process because I think it's such a mystery to most people,
to me too. I mean,
yeah.
But I feel like there's 2 different kinds of casting, and they're very distinct. And one is the actual thing where you meet with actors and talk to them and work with them, and then the other is
the good way.
The like real casting. And then there's this whole Hollywood politics thing, which is not particularly creative. It's just what it is. And I'm not the expert. And, I work with producers who do a lot more of the navigating that stuff than I do. But yeah, you don't know when a rep is slow rolling you or giving you a hard time, you never know if that's coming from the rep or from the actor. And you just, figure out what you can figure out and try not to get too bogged down. Certainly you don't. The most frustrating thing is when you're in these situations where it's like, oh, they're going to read it. And then, but we have an exclusive offer out and we're like doing nothing for however many months while we wait for somebody to maybe read this who may or may not want to read it, who may or may not know that it exists.
Right. Yeah.
That's the hardest part. Yeah. You don't know that they're just, they're waiting for something else to hit. So they're kind of holding you down here and they're playing chess with you and you're a chess piece that you don't even know you're in a chess game.
Yeah. Yeah. And the most infuriating thing is when you get caught on those exclusive things where
you can't go out to anybody. Yeah.
And then probably also infuriating for the actor who sometimes doesn't know either and who might easily, quickly, swiftly choose you if they knew that you existed.
Offer, right? You're already putting down an offer. You already have a chunk of money dedicated to that. So you can't really even go after some of the other pieces because also that piece affects some of your financing and some other pieces. So it's just, it can, and then you're like, how long does it take the guy to read? like a month, and then for a no,
Yeah. And sometimes the no is like, what it means is they finally got that person's attention and told them what it was. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do an indie. Sometimes it just took a month to get to that.
Right.
Just to have the conversation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so like with There, so when you start that process, are you already working with someone who is your producer or your producers?
Yeah.
And so you as a team are saying you're compiling a list of actors that you're going to go out to?
Yeah. So Houston King, who I've worked with for 20 years, Dia Sokol Savage, who I'd done some early films with and was very excited to be working with her again on this. And then Sam Bisbee, who was on the finance side, who was also one of our producers. I think we started with my like, well, here's my top hits, and here are the people that I can email directly, which is a few, but not all, and just start down that path. And then, again, these producers are also people who have been doing this so at least they will have relationships with the reps, which who knows what that means, but start down that road, start to collect our no's, and then go from there and build the list. And some things were more difficult than others.
So you go out to them, you ask them, and then you go through this weird process of you wait.
Yeah.
And you don't know if they're really getting it or they're reading it or yada, yada.
But at a certain point, because we're doing this weird piecemeal thing, once we have finance committed and we're going to do this, then we start the process. So, we're shooting with Jason while still many other
Casting
parts are cast.
So that gives you more
We go
leverage.
one at a time.
Which is fun.
Yes?
Who's playing the other part? I don't know.
We'll see.
Does that give you more leverage?
Leverage? I don't think it
No?
gives us leverage. I mean, it gives us some
It's
security
scary
of
a little bit, right? Like,
of course it's scary, but I think at that, once we've started to spend money, we'll probably get to shoot the rest of the thing. Hopefully
Right.
the financiers won't just shut it all down.
Yeah.
So
But with going out to other actors, are you able to say, well, we're in production with Jason?
that helps.
that helps.
And it helps.
Yeah, it helps
Yeah.
a ton.
So hurry up and read it.
Right.
Let's go.
Right.
TikTok, motherfuckers.
Because Tom Cruise is awesome.
Exactly.
You know what, Brad Pitt? We're waiting. Hello.
What are some of your biggest challenges or difficulties in getting this one cast?
Well, just how weird it was.
Yeah.
I mean, and understandably, I think plenty of people, and it's good. I mean, again, I'm fine with an efficient pass. So if you tell somebody what
Right.
you're doing and they're like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is that? No, great. Like,
Yeah.
thank you.
No,
Let's
that's
move
when
on.
you get a no quick. It's like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Because now
Yeah.
you can push
That's what I was
forward.
kind of saying as far as like how much description of what you were trying to do and because
We
I
had
imagine
to.
if they just
I mean-
read it first, they're like, one, they can probably see all the work that they have to bring to the table, right? But then the vision. Did you have something that you sent ahead of time, or just phone calls?
I think there was some kind of, note that we appended with, and I think it's actually in the screenplay too, just, a little paragraph
Yeah.
at the head of like, this is how we're going to do this. Now, plenty of questions that people are going to have, sure, and I'm happy to answer those questions, but
And then do you feel after those conversations, like she said, it's a trust thing that you're, because I have some directors that if I can just get them on the phone
Yeah.
with the actor, I know they can get that, they can convince them.
I can never tell.
Yeah.
I can never tell. I mean, I think, for the most part, yeah, if we've gotten that far, it usually goes okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But you never know. You
Yeah.
never know what I think I have another project that I've been trying to get together forever. And I did get as far as the phone call with a pretty well-known actor. And I didn't sell her. She had some questions that I couldn't quite, mostly like, she's like, I don't understand why, basically he was like, I don't understand why my character doesn't have a bigger role.
Right,
And I was
right,
like, well,
right.
because that's what this story is.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so that was a no.
Yeah.
But we got to have the conversation.
I mean, I was going through something right now, which was yes, gonna do it, yes, and then final minute, nope.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, we've certainly had that.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
There's a lot of that
Right.
that happens. Yeah. He loves it, gonna do it. Yes. Nope.
And I'll say, I mean, we did have some of that on there. And in this case, it was like a couple of people who I think were a little nervous about what it was, with good reason. Who, I think we're torn between being interested in the project and there was some relationship with me, and then got a little cold feet on it, which I totally respect.
I mean, I could see just from the amount of work that they, the people, because a lot of times, as you might have experienced, actors aren't the best sometimes with pages and pages and pages of dialogue.
Sure.
It becomes a thing on set where you're like, they can't remember their lines.
Spoiled for choice. Goodness sakes.
So I can see that being a thing for sure. The amount of work and just the insecurity of like, I don't know if I can hold screen for that long with all this dialogue.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, well, I mean,
screen for so long.
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, it's true. Like, I have many actors who are like, I don't want to be
on camera.
I don't want to be first on call sheet. I don't want to have that responsibility. Like, there's a lot of people that don't want that.
True that. It can be scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I've never been first, so I have no frame of reference. But I can, kind of get it, I guess.
No, I once got an opportunity to host this like live show once with John Henson, and I nearly shat my pants. I was like, "No, this is not for me. Maybe not." It was scary.
But hosting is also a little different.
Maybe so. It was like live, and here we go, and I was like, "John, I don't know." It was scary.
I'm sure. My goodness.
It's like, he was like, "You're funny. You can do it. Come on, just try." And I was like, that's maybe a little bit too big for me. Maybe. I don't know.
I think what's interesting, though, because earlier you mentioned about chemistry, in a traditional setting, we would try to have a chemistry test, whatever. And since none of these actors were in the same room, like, was that easier? Was it like, considering you didn't even have everyone cast as you're shooting, Jason and his scenes?
It was kind of easier, just in as much as
like, was it easier the fact because trying to find these actors for these scenes and not actually being able to do a full chemistry test, like being able to be, if you and I were auditioning together and they're like, oh, they work so well together, they weren't able to do that during this process because of shutdown.
Yeah.
So the whole process of putting that together, starting to film, and then okay, we got John, who's gonna play?
Oh,
you know
yeah. He didn't have a you didn't have a choice.
Yeah,
really?
But
did you?
Again, it was
or
it was the nature of the project. I was embracing all the things. I was embracing so many things that were wrong.
Right.
And
it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Well, we made something very weird, but that that's what we set out to do. So in that sense, it was a relief to kind of say this thing that Hollywood is always telling you to do is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just get they would say get the most famous person. Yeah. In my case, it wasn't get the most famous person, but it was, get somebody who's going to work for the role. And it doesn't matter, what exactly what we will make the chemistry. The chemistry will be, it's all going to be built in the lab. That's what we're doing.
Well, that's the process always. I'm going to get this guy and get this guy, and they're going to show up, and I'm going to figure this out when they get to me because you don't have time for rehearsal. I mean, it's always that.
Yeah.
And that's what I said is a huge problem. It's like I get on these calls and they're like, well, what's his value? I'm like, what about the movie? Like, what about the role? Like, he's right for this. Is he right? Like, not what he's worth in Japan.
That's why, like, Annie Laganga, Jesus Christ, she just exploded on screen in that role. And you would have never known because she didn't have any value, according to them. Right?
I'm always making that case of like, if the movie is good, it might not be as much value as just a huge name, but that's a value, and it's a value we can use. It's a value we can promote. You can, and I'm always, I think everything I've done has had like, Support the Girls. My prior movie, we had Shayna McHale play one of the leads, and she's a rapper, Jungle Pussy.
Yeah.
She had not acted before or not in much. And that was another thing where I was kind of making the case, like, look, we'll promote, A Star Is Born. Here, like, let's get behind
do some of that.
This exciting new actor, and that's a thing you can use. I understand it's not the same as Brad Pitt, but it's something. And if it works as well as I think it's going to work, then it has a value.
I know.
Do you stay at a price point too that kind of allows you to have this freedom?
I have.
You have,
yeah. But there isn't. That's change. Everything's changing. There is no price point. I mean, I've made unbelievably cheap movies that are still not profitable. There's no low enough that nobody cares.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Support the Girls was interesting because that was it seems like such a different movie for you.
They're all different somehow.
Yeah.
That that was my biggest budget, although it's still pretty low by movie standards. I don't know, just fun to get away with. I can never reconstruct how these things came to be.
You cast some great people in it, though. For sure. It was a great cast. I remember it came across our desk, and I remember I was real excited for everybody that was in that.
It's an extraordinary cast. Yeah. Very, very lucky.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Who knows? Well, the craziest thing I'm doing, because I can't leave a painful enough thing alone. I'm taking there, and we're making a multi-channel gallery installation version of it because I'm insane. So,
okay,
you will have these people, instead of cutting back and forth from one to the other, you'll have them holding their own screens on opposite sides of a room, and it will be even weirder and more disorienting. I had the idea in my head that this thing kind of lent itself to that sort of presentation too. So I'm working on that.
Amazing.
That's super interesting. I was just at a museum in Arkansas at the Walmart, and they had some of those screens with people in it. And then I actually called a director I work for, and there's all this footage that we haven't used. And I was like, dude, we should do this.
That sounds cool.
That's super fun. I feel like that's a world that we should all start exploring as far as in event sort of museum style to bring in the sort of theatrical experience in a different way.
Yeah,
I'm super excited to see something like that.
I'm excited about it, and hopefully we'll get to bring it here. We've got a gallery we're working with in LA, but I'd like to travel it as much as we can. I have no idea if this will work. It's another crazy experiment, but
I think it's a great idea. And so you're going to use the footage that you have? Are you going to shoot more? Or?
Yeah, no, it's all from footage we have. You end up seeing more of the actors because they hold the screen. They're also going to be going in and out of sync. It's going to be very weird. And then there's a third screen. So there's a little bit of new stuff that gets peppered in.
Is there a story as you go through, or is it like you're going to be anywhere you are in this process, you will be able to tap into the story?
You walk in, it's like literally walking into the middle of a movie where it's kind of on both sides of you.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I hope the movie is well suited to it because it's a movie where we took so much of, usually when you tell a story, it's like it's rooted in time and place. It's like it takes place in this place at this time. Here was a movie that, I'm cutting from Bologna to LA like it's nothing. Yeah. So there's kind of already no time and place in the movie, and it already has a kind of loop structure. So it just seemed like this makes sense for you to just walk in wherever you walk in and have whatever experience you have. We'll see. So I'm
super excited for that.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And I would be, if that goes well, let me know, because I'd be interested in doing more stuff like that. Because I just have so many interesting people that not necessarily work within the normal structure, but would work in that structure, which I think would be fascinating to play around with.
I'm learning. I mean, the art world is a whole other.
It's a whole
other nut to crack.
It's a whole other nut to crack. But I think that sort of live experience with our medium in that and you get people who are already so open to being moved emotionally, and they're not sitting there entertain me. It's like I think you could just do profound effects on the human soul and the human experience to be able to really figure out how to. I mean, especially with some of the stuff that we've done and some of the footage that I wanted to bring to that experience, it's just it's heartbreaking and moving, and that's super interesting. And I'm all about that. Give me a call. I'm all about that. Yeah, that'd be so much fun.
I'm excited to give it a whirl.
That sounds awesome.
So sorry.
I've got the same thing I've been trying to make forever, which is a steep uphill battle, and I've got another indie that nobody wants to pay for. I got a writing job I'm going to do now. I got a TV show I'm supposed to pitch at some point. I have a lot of you call them irons in the fire, but sometimes it's irons in the fridge. Or
Are you able to stay true to because Hollywood loves to do this? We love what you do. Now go do our things. Are you trying? Are you trying to stay true to?
I'm happy to. What I think there's a thing in the middle that I haven't been good at, and that's where I think the careers are. Is like. I can do. I'm going to be an auteur and do whatever weird thing I thought of. And it's a struggle, of course. It's not like these things don't fall in your lap. You chase them for years, and sometimes they don't happen. But I can do that. I know how to do my self-guided thing. I know how to do an assignment. So like
gun for hire.
Yeah. And I was
Is that when you go write for Lady and the Tramp?
Yeah, and that was just great luck. I mean, it's always luck. But I met with a producer, a guy named Brigham Taylor, who's had he's an independent producer, but his whole career has been at Disney, and he used to be an exec there.
How do you tap into that mindset of writing? Is that just a?
It's like being an actor, you know.
Just
How
a-
do you
just
how do you
like a
tap into any
skill?
of those mindsets?
That's so crazy to me.
I just did my best, and I think I will say when I was writing my drafts of that, I had no illusions about. I didn't think I was bringing an auteur voice. I didn't think this is Andrew Bujalski's Lady and the Tramp. I thought, I get it. This is Disney's Lady and the Tramp. And I
would have loved Andrew.
yeah, sure. I realized after, it was only I'd written all my drafts where I tried my best to write in the Disney voice, and then of course the nature of that kind of project. I think there were 5 other writers on it after me. So when I saw the finished product, I said, "Oh, okay, that's the Disney voice." There probably was more of my voice than I thought in my script. Only when I saw the thing kind of scrubbed of that and fully Disney.
They seem to have it figured out over there.
They do. They know what they're doing.
They know what works for them.
That mouse knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you are there's another ground you said you're trying to go for?
Well, I think there's that middle ground where you kind of, where you do the exec's job for them. You come in and you say, "This is the thing that you want that you didn't know you wanted," but here's my $1 billion idea. I'm not good at that. Every time I try to do the "here's your $1 billion idea for you," it ends up being crazier and more absurd than my auteur ideas.
Right.
So I have not mastered that lane, and I think that's the lane where you make money.
But what we see and what I've seen a lot of times is that there's the amazing stuff that you do, and then you guys are like, I got to make money, I got to do this thing, and then you go and you get all this responsibility and this money, and then there's not a happiness there, right? And there's a struggle there, and the bills are paid, which are nice, but then we're always trying to go back to to this,
Sure, of course.
Yeah. And it's like, how the hell do we keep this and get everyone fed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. And
it's like they need to just wise up and pay us.
Well,
to
the
do
Sing
this.
Sing guys that we talked to were interesting, right?
They have this really cool structure.
And other people are doing it where everyone's
structure.
taking the same rate and everyone's getting back in based on the amount of effort and energy and days into it. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And then they're doing a 60-40 split. So 60 going from first dollar going back to financiers, 40 going to the pool, That seems interesting to me, and it's something that I think I'm going to be moving forward. When people call me and say, "Hey, we want you to work for nothing," I'll be like, "I'm not doing that anymore." Like, there has to be a better way.
Sure.
And I think there's a way, because I think your voice and your movies, they stand out, and they obviously have a uniqueness that people are drawn to, and I think that everyone craves, especially right now because of the dullness of all the movies that you said. Like, it's hard to find a movie that's not. It's not Oppenheimer or something that's just this great, huge, cinema masterpiece. So there has to be a better world, a better way.
The economics are everything changes so much so rapidly.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when I feel myself freaking out over how everything's unrecognizable from when I started, I comfort myself slightly by thinking, it's not like there's any 20, 25 year period in cinema history where things didn't all completely change. That's always how it's been.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have no idea how to make the economics make sense.
Yeah. Have you found though it's easier for you to get films made?
Never.
Yeah. No.
Every time is
to
the
get
hardest
cast?
time.
Yeah.
Like that certainly. And again, I came out of my first 4 movies my first 3 were, I think, entirely non-professional actors, and then, start to pepper in some. But those were also, and, I wasn't, basically I didn't need to get paid on the first 4 movies because I was young.
Right, exactly.
And that changes everything.
You have a kid?
For sure, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That changes everything.
Everything.
I got 2
Lady
kids.
and the Tramp? Yep.
Yeah.
Right here.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Totally.
Ford commercial. Here I am.
Absolutely. Yeah. And remarkably, it's like in terms of and I'm a member of the Writers Guild now, and I'm off of strike now, which is nice. I hope y'all join us soon enough. Just if I have to do something where I have to get paid Writers Guild minimum, like already that's kind of changes the scope of what you can do independently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, but you asked something else, and then I forgot what it was.
I just want to be able to find guys like you, an audience, in a way to keep making movies and not have to be like. How do we? I have so many amazing directors that I work with, and it's the same struggle.
Yeah.
It's like how do we start getting some sort of respect for cinema and for what we create and getting value in it? And
It's just many of them on our show.
But I think with the way the world is now, like there has to be a platform, or a way to connect to your audience, or and be able to like get funded, or do it in a way that everyone is on board, and we all sit at the same table and we all eat what we kill and we all take that risk.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Of course. And we've tried to do these things as egalitarian as possible as we go, but it's just every production is there. It's always its own organism. And
no, I mean, people don't know. I mean, you probably have projects as I do, 3, 4, 5 years just trying to get,
Of course. Yeah.
Yep. Got one right now. We just finally got an actor and it looks like it's going to go. So
it's just like, why does it all has to be so big? It feels like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Of
it
course.
all has to be like this traveling circus that we're lugging behind us financially. And it just all has to be so big. But I feel like everything got cheaper to make. Did it not?
I think it is. I think it's in the process of getting that way.
Well, I think it's attention economy too. It's like, of course, sure. As predicted, anybody can make a movie in their backyard for $20 now, and that's great. How do you get anybody to watch that? I think that's the part that cratered.
Because now we're at a place where people won't go to the movies.
Yeah, fewer and fewer people go to the movies, and even if you're releasing something on YouTube, there's a whole other.
That's because
it's so hard to get
culturally,
eyeballs and
but
get
that's because
attention.
Culturally we don't.
Right. I think
we're not joined in that anymore because we've all fractured it with all of this platform stuff.
Sure.
There's too much everywhere.
My 13-year-old comes home from school and he puts on the YouTube shorts, and like, it's just like these 5 to 15-second things. I don't know I don't think he knows what he's watching. He just
It's
like
dopamine.
Yeah. And nothing is bringing us together culturally. Which is what cinema used to do, which is what one rock band used to do.
That's why I'm so interested
used to
in getting into like the art space, because people are there with their attention, their focus, their
on the
one space. Yeah, and it is something they have to experience, And
that's
they don't.
Why I thought
they're going
theater after the pandemic would explode
in,
because it's like people in a room together again. It's one thing again. I thought
it's such a great idea because you're going into this and you don't know what to expect.
That's
you're about,
right.
You're a blank. You're a blank canvas. You're about to be surprised.
Yeah,
and to have that ability to emotionally, take someone through this experience and to give them.
But it's got to be affordable and there's got to be parking.
Well, it's most museums.
We'll see.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah. But the art world's just as, if not more difficult than the
It's
film
so
world.
douchey. We got to bring down the douchey level. Come on, guys. Come on. We got to make it middle class. Every man. Let's go.
Well, there's a bar to entry there too, and of course they've got their blockbusters too, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
All right.
Trying to learn it.
Okay. Well, man, we appreciate it.
So much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been so nice having you.
Yeah.
The pleasure has been all mine.
Andrew Bujalski, everyone.
Thank you.
Yay.
There is on. I think I got it on Amazon.
I got mine on
On
Hulu.
Bezos.
Was it Amazon?
Yeah.
I think it was Hulu, no?
Yeah.
On both?
You can get it wherever you want.
You can get it wherever
It's
you
around.
want. That's the world we live in, people. 2023. Get it. Our show today was recorded in studio by the good folks at Record ATX. Check them out at recordatx.com. Our theme music is produced by Jonathan Price. You can check out some of the sounds he makes with his project, The Mid-Cities, on Spotify. Follow, subscribe, and smash that like button if you see one. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.